life changes, which is nice. One of them is you can free reign with your running. So you're no longer stuck running in a individual straight line. You can pretty much move in whatever direction you want until the stamina bar hits 0. One of the techs we'll be using for the first part of the game and not really closer past that. We want to do every screen transition at 100 stamina. For some weird reason, the game delays stamina regeneration for about 2 seconds. So here we're an orphan kid that fell off a waterfall. We fell into the river and we found ourselves a giant rusty sword we haven't even used yet. So we get back to the village and the elder's like, "Oh my god, you pulled the sword out." And then you start getting bullied. So we're gonna have a little tussle with, I don't remember this guy's name, but it can't be good. So he's gonna fall in the hole with us. So Mantis Ant, this is another slight change from the SNES version. While you're attacking, you don't actually have a collision box. So in the first swing of Mantis Ant is the only attack that actually deals damage. So if we stand right in front of him and we attack as his first scythe goes through, we can just sit right in his face and hit him without worrying about any damage. Mantis Ant's one of those fights where even though it's a tutorial, can be quite difficult. If things go awry, if you get too far away, he can cast a very lengthy spell called Gem Missile. You can also cast something to put you to sleep, and if you die here, it's no big deal. Gemma's just like, hey, focus your energy, you're good to go. And then you kind of wake up and go back with the world. So every time you beat a boss, you get a orb. And the orbs will be used to level up the weapons. So here, Gemma's like, oh, hey, look, it looks like you're a knight of the Mana Soldiers. They're like, go talk with Luca in the Water Palace. We're like, first we gotta talk to the Elder. So we're getting the boot out of the village. So the only thing really to do here is get kicked out of the village, and in the basement we can get a chest for 50 GP. In the SNES version, it's faster to take the cannon travel to Water Palace, but in the remake, because of the changed movement, it's faster to run there. Sadly, in this version, they did take out the cannon travel animations, which made me very, very sad. But because of the cannon travel, just talking to the guy loading up into the cannon, it does equal out some very nice routing changes. So we're going to avoid talking to Dyluck and his soldiers, because that stops us from getting the cutscene with Prim when we get kidnapped by goblins. So here we just learn about the lore about how the Knight of Mana defeated the Mana Fortress and the Mana Beast to secure safety in the world. Luca is a 1,000-year-old guardian. She looks amazing. So he's like, hey, they've already fought a monster in Potos. And he's like, you can figure out what to do, don't worry about it. So here we can ask Luca a general question. The fastest way to get through it is just to answer on the right twice. You can actually, if you end up mashing, or thankfully with this game, as long as the game is active, you can hold the spacebar and it does all the mashing for you. So there's a couple of times I spaced out, and you can get yourself into like a 6-7 dialogue box before you actually get to the answer you want. So we get our second weapon, the spear. This game has 8 weapons. We won't be using a lot of them. as I go through the run, like I'll discuss the differences between SNES and the remake. They made a couple of mistakes in the remake, which really work into the benefit of a speedrun. There is no glitches, there's no sequence breaks, unlike the SNES version, if you're familiar with that. So our main goal is to either, we can recruit our second character and then go through the forest, or we can go right to Gaia's Navel and progress. It's faster to go to Gaia's Navel. So, and this is the one time we will take the cannon travel, because Gaia's Navel is quite a bit of a distance away. It's not just like one screen over. So here we'll be fighting a couple of enemies. I want not so much levels, but I want at least 250 gold. Because I want to buy a Power of Embrace, and then I need 100 to upgrade the sword. So this also allows me to get the sword at level to level 1. So every time you charge up the weapon, it's a 50% damage boost. We don't really use a lot of the charged weapons. But for this next boss coming up, it's quite important. Tropicalo's a cycle-based boss. So since we have time between cycles, we can just charge up the attack without really losing much of anything. So here, I want to make sure to push these guys against the switch. The game doesn't account it as an action against the enemies, and if you hit a switch, you don't end up using stamina. So it just saves a couple of seconds for a couple of free hits. These bats are playing surprisingly kind. They can cast a balloon, which means you just kind of sit there and you regret life for 10 or so seconds. So this game has a high and a low roll. So in this, the high roll is 23. And the low roll is 17. Low rolls are generally 80% of your strength. I don't even know what I'm doing with this grouping, but it's not healthy. One nice thing on level ups is you get full hit points and you also get your magic points back. So for the early parts, there is a experience route. More so for Popoi, the sprite. Just so we can get magic back. The inns are a good source, but the remake added in cutscenes. So a simple inn trip's about 45 seconds if there's a table present. If there's not a table present, it's still about 20 seconds. So a lot of the early game is routed very meticulously, where we just keep on how many kills we have going through everything. I just want to fight one more for the level, as I took a little bit of damage from that chest. Pokes Frosty. So we're buying the Power of Embrace. The Power of Embrace gives Randy +5 to his strength. And it also gives him a little bit of defense and evasion. We're not really worried about the defense and evasion too much. We're pretty much going to be running with stock equipment through the whole game. So by getting an extra 5 strength, we're doing an extra 5 damage. It's not a lot, but in this early of the game, it's definitely warranted. Or it's definitely nice, I should say. So there's two options. You can come here with the minimum of 100 GP. And then the sprite will call you cheap, or you can come here with 150 and he likes you. Either way, you get the money back, so it doesn't really matter too much. So we find the sprite has been washed away from his village and he has amnesia, so they're trying to raise 50,000 GP to get him back home. And they're doing that by scamming him out of people. Popoi has a lot of like really funny animations during the cutscenes. For anyone that watched the Lots of Lore run earlier this year, Popoi's one of the more jovial characters in the game. So this is the only upgrade that costs 100 GP. Most upgrades from level 1 to level 2 cost 200. But Good Guy Watts ends up giving us a discount. So going from level 1 to level 2 is also, for the sword, is about a 5 attack upgrade. So with the sword and the bracer, we're sitting at 10 attack over base. So Tropicalo can spawn in one of 3 places. We're going to delay our attack just a second, because that'll have him spit out the pumpkin. And the longer you can keep this pumpkin out on the field, the longer his AI is frozen. So it allows you to potentially get an extra hit off. Farming there in the right corner was a little bit of bad juju. So unlike the SNES version, the Bramblers actually give experience and they give gold. So killing them makes the next part coming up quite a bit easier. So after the first cycle, we want to hit them as soon as we can. So doing 46 compared to 23 is quite a big damage difference. He usually takes 4 to 5 cycles. If you get a crit, you save basically an entire cycle. Like, critting him for 96 damage is huge. So we get the Spear Orb. So here we get access to the 2 ranged weapons. So we get a boomerang and we get a bow and arrow. The game made this next area coming up, the Witch Forest, very, very difficult. They increased the firing rate of the bow and arrow. Unfortunately, they also gave it to the enemies. So if you have like 3 Chobin feet or Robin Hoods on the screen, they can definitely just drain you to 0 hit points very, very quickly. So this is an area where you get like a large amount of weapons. So we also get the axe, and there's one thing we haven't used yet is hotkeys. This game gives you access to 2. You can hotkey 2 abilities, 2 items. For the vast majority, there'll be spells, but for coming up, hotkeying weapons is very nice, and it allows to do some very interesting things, especially for Spiky Tiger. So here we're going to talk to Nico, the price gouging cat. We're going to buy 4 candies for safety. Much like the SNES version, you can cancel out damage by throwing a curative item at the right time. And even though Popoi is going to be quite low level, I do want him to survive the Spiky Tiger fight. That allows him to fight Wallface with 10 magic. And it makes that fight quite a bit easier. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, you kind of just work around it. So here we're just switching party members between attacks. To get a little bit of extra distance. And there I was just switching between the sprite and the boy to keep them stun locked. Popoe dies in 1 or 2 hits, depending on what kind of damage rolls you get. And if he dies here, you just have to load the autosave. So you really want to keep them stun locked as much as possible, and that's one of the downsides with running with very little to no armor. It makes the beginning very, very fast, but it does make it very reset heavy. So here I'm just setting everyone up with the weapons I want. So you can do some cheeky stuff with the attack command. So for here, for an example, if you have them cue the B, they're just going to run against that, which means through this area, they're going to be safely positioned on top of on the mountain, as you can just safely run through this area. It's a hair bit slower, but it is quite a bit faster. Or it's a hair bit slower, but it is safer, I should say, sorry. Because you don't have to worry about anyone taking damage along the way. And then once your enemy or your allies are off screen, if you end up opening the menu, we call it menu calling. So we end up instantly teleporting our 2 other players, if they're not doing an action, instantly towards us. It's used in quite a few places. So here we're just going through the witch's castle. The witch abducted Dyne, one of the characters, and we're just trying to make it through. This area is a good contestation. So here we're going to menu call, and then we're going to allow them to attack, and then menu call again, just so they don't get damaged. So the beginning, the first hour of the game probably has like a lot of the cool tech, and then it quickly devolves past that into like a magic and crit spam. But there is definitely a lot of neat movement. Switching between characters for attacking to keep an enemy in a physical stun lock's very nice. So this game has a spell called Moon Energy. Moon Energy grants you 1 free crit at level 0, and then for every level you upgrade it, grants you an additional crit. So in this game, damage stacks even though the damage values don't. So even though the maximum display value for damage is 999, the game will internally track every hit you give, and unlike the SNES version, you can guarantee a crit at 0 stamina. So we'll level up Moon Energy to level 6, giving us 6 free crits. So even though the game will only show we did 900 damage, we ended up doing something like 1200. So one thing we want to be careful of is buffs with a timed duration. Well, actually, the buff will persist. Nice, very, very, very good fight. So if the boy or the girl died right after, or they died from Fire Bouquet spellcast, they would have a permanent 25% attack down the buff that would persist through the whole game until they got it recasted on them. Which also means we can give ourselves permanent good buffs. And that will be happening coming up just shortly after the next boss. So we had Popoe live. That was actually a very, very tame fight. And I still have candies. So Elena's going to give us the 7th weapon, the whip. The sprite is pretty much going to be married to the whip for the rest of the game. Since Sprite's not a physical-based character, he doesn't really need to do damage. So we put Prim in front because she steps out the furthest in the cutscene. And since... I would give Prim the tiger outfit, but I think it's a little too lewd for a stream like this. So we'll give her the Mugo onesie. So Elena's like, hey, I'm sorry for doing all that bad stuff. Go check out, there's something wrong with the water palace. So we can finally make use of the whip poles, and this is the reason Sprite will have the whip. These are day 1 costumes. If you got the pre-order or you bought it on the first day, these came free. There's a Moogle and a tiger outfit. Oh crap. Oh crap. Alright, so this is a reload. I need to have all 3 of these characters alive. Unfortunately, the enemy AI doesn't deactivate right away on a door transition. So sometimes you can activate a door, and if their AI is already engaged, they'll just whack you. If anyone suffers from motion sickness, now would be a good time to look away for a little bit. So the reason we're rapidly changing between 3 characters is the AI will not move the character towards the enemy until they're at 100% stamina. So by doing it manually, you end up saving about 3 or 4 seconds on this fight. So, enemy AI in this game is very, very weird. Enemies like to have a distance between you and them. So by trapping this lizard in the corner, the game, he wants to jump away from us so he can cast a spell, Cure Water to heal himself or eat one of our characters. But since there's a wall stopping him from getting space, he just perpetually gets stuck in this motion over and over again. Which makes this fight pretty consistent, because a lot of the healing spells do cure him for quite a bit of damage, and he does like to cast it quite a bit. So here we get Undine. Undine is going to be MVP for this run. So there's 5 spells in the game that have 61 spell power. Burst is technically the strongest with 100 spell power, but you get it so late in the game and no enemies are weak against wood element. It doesn't really do anything. So Undine's freeze is 61 spell power for 2 magic. With Gnome, it's Earth Slide for 3. For Sylphid, it's Thunderbolt for 4. Exploder on Salamando is 4, and Lucent Beam on the girl with Lumina is 8. So Freeze is just an insanely good spell they give you at the very, very beginning of the game. On top of that, every time you level up a spell, it gets a 50% damage multiplier increase. So on top of it just being a good spell, we can level it up very quickly for lots of extra damage, and then if you hit an elemental weakness, you get double damage on top of that. That being said, we will still be fighting Fire Gigas at level 0 for Freeze. A lot of the good time saves came from just routing out leveling up magic, or just levels in general, and it's pretty much become a boss spam for the vast majority of it. There's not a lot of enemies, if not really any, that we go out of our way to fight outside of the beginning grind. So we're gonna give the girl also a power van base. She's a pretty decent physical attacker, so giving her an extra 5 attack is very nice. So here we're just hotkeying spells. You don't need to hotkey Cure Water, but it does allow you to do some nice funky things in this dungeon coming up. So there's 2 switches we have to hit on either side of this area. By running up and trapping them against the wall, we can freely access this first one. And then, while the girl casts the spell, she's safe from damage, so it saves us running back and forth. Just abusing the fact that we're not stuck on the same screen as our party members. So we take a wide turn here. While you're getting onto a whip post, you don't take damage. So by taking the wide turn allows us the time to get where we need to be. I do want to lead with Prim coming up for the next boss to try to get a quick kill. Nice. So the sword has the fastest attacking animation. By mashing X during the load screen, we can physically interrupt Fire Gigas's teleport, which allows us to just save. It saves about 8-9 seconds because we don't have to worry about him reappearing. So here I'm just going to continually spam attacks with the sprite to keep them in a physical stun lock because we don't have any more spells for magic. And that's Fire Gigas down. So if you don't get him in the physical stun lock, he'll just teleport away. He does have quite a few nasty abilities. But it is still possible to get him in a physical stun lock. If, like, he gets the first teleport off and ends up roaming around. So we get our second ability, Gnome. Gnome is used quite a bit in the early game, just for hitting elemental weakness, for that double damage boost. The mana seeds also come into play, so the amount of mana seeds you have squared will dictate how much of an extra damage boost you get on your high roll. So because we have 2 seeds, we get an additional 4 damage, on top of allowing spells and weapons to upgrade now to level 2. A large chunk of our damage for late game will be coming just from mana seed bonus damage. I wanted to equip him with pajamas. It's my run. I'll do what I want with it. So here we're upgrading the spear for an extra 8 attack, which is very, very much needed on this next boss. So we have 3 cups of wishes. We have a bunch of candies. Ouch. So we got the Earth Seed, and Undine's like, hey, there's something wrong, or not Undine, sorry. Luca was like, hey, there's something wrong in Pandora. Why don't you go check it out? I kind of wish there was more to the story, but like this is basically about it at this point. So canon travel is 3.5 seconds faster than running to Pandora. A little bit faster if you count the loadless time. So coming up, we're going to be doing our first glitch of the run. Unlike the SNES version, speed up actually works in this game. Speed up grants you a 25% evasion and agility boost. Agility plays into your hit percent. So as we were talking about with Spiky Tiger, if we die with speed up active, the game will remove the timer flag, but not the buff flag. So by casting on speed up, dying, and then reviving ourselves, we give ourselves a permanent speed up glitch, which pretty much means the boy will have a 100% hit rate. The girl will have somewhere around like a 96, 97. It just saves us from casting speed up over and over again for all the other fights. So the big issue here is getting Randy to die without the Mog or without Popoi dying. So they both died. We're going to revive them. So this is where the gaining magic on a level up is going to come into play. So because Sprite lived through Spiky Tiger, he gets a level here, which gives him an extra magic point, and he gets a free refill. Gem Missile costs 2 magic. So instead of only getting 4 casts of it on the next boss coming up, we now get 5. This is kind of also where the experience route kind of just goes down the drain. Generally, we'll get levels after every fight. So this is going to be another one of those kind of well thought out fights. So what we're going to do is we're going to run up to wall face, we're going to do an attack, and we're going to watch the stamina bar. When the boy's stamina gets anywhere between 75 to 80, we're going to queue up a gem missile. The eye's hitbox shows up before the animation for it to open does. So I'm taking control of the sprite so his physical animations don't interrupt the spell casts. Now, Gem Missile has a very, very long spell animation. So what I'm doing is I'm waiting for the actual gems to be past the middle of the eye before I cast another one to keep them in a magic-based stun lock. If I just cast Gem Missile right away, the second cast will take the enemy out of the magic stun lock that the first cast did. So in this game, spell animations get longer every 2 levels. Gem Missile is the only spell from the base in the remake that you can just magically stun lock an enemy with without an issue. Freeze, you can start doing that around level 4. It's one of the changes they made from the SNES to the remake, is magically stun locking an enemy forever is quite a bit more difficult, if not impossible, at low level spells. So each one of those gem missiles are doing anywhere between 150 to 180 damage. The chip damage from attacks is still also nice. We're doing about 40 damage a round. So this is where that fight took me quite a bit of time to figure out a really optimal way to do it at level 0. The left eye will like to cast Cure Water, and then the right eye likes to do a lot of physical-based spells. So if the fight goes on for too long, you can really find yourself in a sticky situation. One other thing I'm paying attention to during the run is I'm going to want to partially level up 2 of the boy's weapons. So I'm looking for the axe and the spear to get anywhere between 86 to 98% weapon completion. When you summon the Mana Sword at the very, very end of the game, it actually uses your weapon experience in the damage formula. So by having 2 weapons at 90 partial weapon experience, you get about 160 extra attack. Weapon experience, partial weapon experience is worth basically 1 for 1 on the attack scale, where a full level is only worth 12.5. So if I end up leveling up the axe or the spear, I'm effectively losing out on 75 attack. Which on the final boss is quite a bit of damage, especially if I lose track of both numbers. So there are points during the run I'll just quickly check my my weapon level, but because a lot of the enemies or a lot of the bosses are going to get killed with magic, it makes that part of the route very, very, you're just constantly checking it because it changes from every run. So here we meet the Team Rocket of Secret of Mana. They stole the water seed to put in their Kilroy machine to try to make it better. And then Kilroy got too strong, so they took the seed out. So if you hit Kilroy in the battery pack in the back, he gets in this little funny animation. So freeze is the only good thing Sprite could do for damage. And then we're going to hope to physically just keep him in this stun lock. You were supposed to stay in a stun lock. There we go. I always like the little bong wong wong when the head pops off. The remake does seem easier than the SNES. I don't know if it's the quality of life, if it's harder to get, if it's harder for you just to get damage stacked against you. But like each have their own kind of charms. So we stopped Team Rocket, we got the seed, and now we have to return the seed. So the Jabberwocky fight coming up is probably one of the last reset points for a while. Jabberwocky is Undine element, so we have to deal with Gem Missile for damage. On top of it, Jabberwocky's Cure Water will heal him for about 550 hit points. So if at any point in the fight he gets a Cure Water off, it's pretty much a reload of the autosave. When you're only doing about 40 or 50 damage with physicals, curing for 550 is very bad. Especially since if we also die to Acid Rain, we get a 25% permanent debuff. Alright, no one died. Thank you. That hallway could have definitely been handled better. So here it really doesn't matter what option you select. If you select no, it just saves a very slight walking up animation. Outfits aren't important, they're just for shits and giggles. So once again, just keeping control of Sprite. Just to keep a magic-based stun lock. And now we're just kind of hoping for good damage rolls. Nice. Our heroes must look good when defending the world. So thankfully we got that giant crit at the end. We're pretty much on easy streak for the next little bit. We're done with this area of the world at the moment. We're going to be moving on to the upper lands. Who are the heroes? We must destroy them. It's to throw them off guard. They'll never see it coming. Yo, Barnax. Are we singing Easy Street? If I knew the words, I probably could. So I'm sitting at about 70, so I'll probably check it after the Pebblers fight. 1 or 2 more kills, I'd be happy ditching it. I kind of wish they would have included the cannon travel animation, but I will say the first time the world map got revealed, it was a very, very good reveal. So these guys, this is where everyone usually likes to die. And I need to keep them alive. The only way to revive people in this area is from Nico the Price Gouging Cat. And I really don't want to pay 300 GP for a Cup of Wish. That kind of destroys the magic route, or the money route early on. So here we're only allowed, or it's only in the budget to cast 1 freeze per Pebbler. If Popoiga ends up getting a level, then I'll end up using more, but I do want to save magic for what is it? I forget the guy coming up. Springbeak, that's it. I swear I know these names. That was kind of unfortunate. I used the backup Cup of Wish. But I think we'll still be pretty good. So here, because the axe will be used soon, we're just going to upgrade it. So 82, I can take probably 1 or 2 more. Unlike the SNES version, we do have to visit, what was it, Autumn before we complete the cycle for unknown reasons. So a lot of the movement will seem a little janky, but just moving the characters side to side is to get them out of the way of the enemies. The Sigtils especially are very, very troublesome. Just doing a menu call to grab them back. So here we learn the Sprite's village got overran. And there's something in the distance. So Gnome does amazing job for damage against Springbeak. And then because the sprite's going to be hitting the front beak that's armored, the boy will just keep jabbing at the back to keep him once again in a physical stun lock. So like any bird enemy like that, they're armored at the front. So if you were listening carefully, you'd hear like a tink, tink, tink. That's the sprite's weapon hitting it, which means you don't deal any damage and you don't generate a stun lock. The stun lock is one of the important things just for like to get through these fights efficiently without spending a lot of money for either like Cups of Wishes or especially Fairy Walnuts, because the only place we can buy them right now is Neko, the price gouging cat. And paying 1,000 GP for an item that will effectively restore 10 magic points is a little ridiculous. So here we meet Sprite's grandfather. He's blinded from when the Empire came in and broke the seal on the Wind Seed. So here we get access to Sylphid. We'll be using Sylphid twice in the whole run. Sylphid just doesn't really have a lot of good spells. So now we have to make our way to Matango. It's a village full of mushroom people. The only customer is you. I will admit, he is in a couple of good spots. I like the remake in terms of a speedrun. I'm also very biased because I've pretty much routed all of this by myself. The SNES remake still does have its charm, but the big thing that gets me with the SNES is are you being stuck on the same screen because of the characters. I find a lot of the times you're just fighting with the AI to progress, where with here is if they die at some point, it doesn't really matter. Because you can leave them 2 screens behind. And just like the free-flowing movement is really nice. There is also a good increase to your item limit that I haven't talked about. So you can have anywhere between 4 to 12 items as your item limit. In the speedrun, we set it to 12. Having 12 items instead of 4 is really nice. Especially in the later stages, it just has us avoid going back to shops so many times. Like, both games are broken from a speedrun perspective. It's just they're both broken in different ways. So here we talk to the Mushroom Kingdom, and he's like, "Hey, there's a giant snake bothering a baby dragon. Can you go check it out for us?" We're like, "Sure, why not?" So we bought 4 Fairy Walnuts. Fairy Walnuts will restore 50 magic points. We'll never at any point in the run will we have 50 magic points. But it's the thought that counts. And then we bought 6 Cups of Wishes. I would like to have 7, but it's not in the cards at the moment. Get a little bit of HP back. So we're hoping that the giant plushy owls don't cast confusion on us. Confusion isn't the biggest thing, it just, you have to play with your controller upside down pretty much. But it does stop your spellcasters from using spells. So racial bonus and elemental damage from sabers works in this patch. It doesn't work in the patch when the game first came out, but it works in this. They add a flat 10 damage. So if your sword's effective against lizards, you get a free flat 10 damage boost. I kind of wish they would have done more with that in the remake. The owls don't like to be hugged. They're very mean like that. Where did you go, little buddy? Oh, shite. Unfortunately, this is the first boss where we're kind of just hunting after him. So we have Baby Sprite. He got Pigmeat, which basically drops your defense and attack to 5. So that'll get... we're not going to bother to remove that from him. It'll get removed in the next area. So Truffle's like, hey, what about naming this guy? And we're like, sure. So Flamey is pretty much going to be sticking with King Truffle for a while. He needs to eat his veggies, get big and strong. So because of the enemy weakness, we'll be upgrading the sword. It gives an extra 6 attack, and then when we fight any lizard-based enemies, it'll give us an extra 10 damage. It's not a whole heck of a lot, but it's still better than nothing. Our main goal for the next area is to deplete Sprite's magic gauge. This will make sure he learns level 2 freeze on a boss fight coming up. Because we get a free heal anyways, we're not really losing any time. So you can go to the ice country if you want, but you still need to go to Kakarika eventually. Going to Kakarika, fighting the mech rider is faster because there's no real way to go from ice country to Kakarika if you skip doing this. So you'd have to go to Matango and then run through Matango. So even though we're kind of going out of our way, it does save time compared to just trying to demo one area at one time. This came out for the Vita, the PS4, and PC. This definitely does feel like a Vita-only game. It did reuse a lot of the assets from Adventures of Mana, the Final Fantasy Adventures remake. It reuses a lot of those, and it being originally only made for a handheld does make sense on how the game operates. Because if they had it in plans for more powerful systems like the PS4 or the PC, I think they could have definitely done a lot more with it. So here we have to talk to Surge twice for him to help us to get out of there. So we talk to the guards and Surge is like, fire! So now we just have to wait for these guards to get out of our way. Everyone's separated, so we have to go find Popoi and then Prim. If you are playing the Any Percent or Opening Day patch, this is where you could do something called sword duplication. So before getting onto the sand ship, we would give Prim the sword and then equip it on Brandy. And then when we got Prim back in the party, the game looks at it and goes, oh, both you have the sword? Okay, cool. So then both characters would have the same weapon equipped, which isn't a big feat on itself, but you can also duplicate orbs by shaking a treasure chest and then running out of the room. So in this game, your party comes together and then you open the chest. For Any Percent, you'd open the chest and then your party would come together. So if you broke the party coming together from like a room transition, you would get the orb and then the game wouldn't flag for it to disappear. So by duplicating sword orbs and then duplicating a bunch load of money, you could forge the mana sword, because the game counts the mana sword as the level 9 sword. So by having two swords that have 150 attack, you just pretty much end up raffle stomping everything, especially with the power of crits. Crits are double your strength, which often lead to more than double damage because you're not losing your strength. Controller? There we go. Because you're not losing strength stat to defense. Well, the thing with like the Moon Temple, so for the SNES, originally this game was supposed to be on the Nintendo PlayStation. The Nintendo PlayStation was a CD-based add-on that was supposed to be for the Super Nintendo console when Nintendo and Sony were good friends. So this game was originally created for a CD, so it had a lot of content that ended up being cut because you couldn't fit it on a regular cartridge. So a lot of assets ended up going into Chrono Trigger, and some of them ended up going into various other Square Enix games. So it's at this point, I kind of wish they would have had a lot of the missing content also back into the game. But it got so split up and divided between games, and especially with it being 20 plus years ago, it's really hard to keep track of it because back then you didn't really think about like making a newer version of the game. Square Enix ran into this with FF8, where they accidentally threw out the source code. And that's why like an FF8 remaster took so long to come out. Because in 90s, early 2000s, you made a game and that was it. Like porting an idea or porting a game and remaking a game wasn't a thought at all. But I do think like if they had the opportunity to add in a bunch of the stuff that got cut, it would have made the story a lot more coherent. Because the story feels very fragmented. Especially once you get to like the later half of the game. So here, we're basically going to be subscribing to the everyone's gonna die philosophy. So I bought 7 Cups of Wishes because it's cheaper to revive everyone than it is to give them armor. always one hit away. So much like with Tropicalo, we gave him a brief interlude before we did the first attack to force out the pumpkin. Thankfully, while spells are on the screen, the pumpkin is frozen, which also means Boreal Face's AI gets frozen. So you end up keeping him above the ground just that little bit longer. So here we run into Team Rocket again. They're like, hey, you guys don't look familiar in your cute little pajamas. Can you watch this furnace? And if it makes any noise, kick it. I'm gonna go for a coffee break. And we completely destroy their vacation getaway. So they were housing the Mana Spirit of Fire Salamando in the furnace. And since we free them, their whole vacation getaway is now destroyed. And then they're like, oh, hey, I know you look familiar. So here we're going to pause for a little bit during the screen transition. This actually slows down their AI for those 3 turtles. If they live, they live. If they die, they die. But it's always nice to keep them alive as long as possible. They're just costumes, that's all they are. If you bought this game, if you pre-ordered the game or bought it day 1, you got 2 costumes for free, the Tiger and the Moogles. So instead of running around with the base character, I decided to use the costumes. They don't add anything, they don't change your stats, they don't change how the game plays. It's just something cute and adorable. So, because we're getting to a boss battle, I want both my characters alive again. It's easy. It's faster just to have them get killed off. All swoon bofty. It's faster to get them killed off than it is to try to avoid getting them killed. So much like the biting lizard we encountered at the very beginning, after the witch, now we fight 3 of them. We will be using a Fairy Walnut here because I want Salamando to get to level 2 before we end up fighting Frost Gigas. There we go. So we generally don't gain a level here. If we do, I'm going to be very sad. The music theme is more hyped than the battles themselves. Santa, yes. So we're in this castle. Santa has been kidnapped by a giant monster. And we're just helping to restore Christmas. We just want everyone to get their gifts. So unlike Fire Gigas, we can't do a quick kill on him, just because he starts quite a bit further back from the doorway. One of the good things is when the enemy's in the teleport, you can actually select him with a spell before he regains control. think I might have been a little too late. Yeah. That was probably the best way to kill him. I missed physically stun locking him. Sprite's attack animation stopped the spell hotkey. I hope Santa got me a 390. Were you a good boy, Thanamir? So we find out Santa used the power of the fire seed to try to make people believe in him again and end up turning him to a monster. And Rudolph the Red-Nosed Doshner was there, always by his side, believing in him. So this is one reason I wanted 7 Cups of Wishes. 2 to revive people before Boreal Face, 2 to revive people before the 3 lizards. And then 2 before the cannon travel. For some reason, the cannon travel guy really hates ghosts. So if any one of your characters are dead, he won't shoot you out of a cannon. I don't know if it's a health risk or if it's more of just a company guideline. So in this, you can pick between the original soundtrack and the remake soundtrack. I like the original soundtrack. The only remake track I think is better than the original, or on par with it at very least, is the Pure Lands. The Pure Lands remake is very enjoyable, very laid back. Dang it. So much like the SNES version, you can use items to revive people. So what happens is if you throw an item on a character that's taking mortal damage, if you do it on the right set of frames during a magic spell, even though you're at 0 hit points, the game doesn't flag the death. It doesn't flag for death. So you can actually, it's just a cheap way of sorts to save a couple of Cups of Wishes or make them go longer. It was nice knowing you, Randy. Oh, he's still alive. Oh, really, Ice Burner? I did not know that. I might have to go digging for him. That does sound like an interesting listen to. Do I actually have the Cup of Wishes for this? Alright, I'm good. I got 3. Oh, interesting. I haven't heard very many of the the remake tracks. And the ones I have heard, I don't like how basically Kakrika Village turned into a an Irish jig. So we're making our way through the Fire Palace. Minotaur is one boss that isn't really difficult like the rest of them. You can just keep casting spells. We do have a Fairy Walnut routed in for this fight. He does have quite a bit of hit points. So now that the bosses are really starting to give more money, we can start using spells more liberally. And keeping that Minotaur stun locked is definitely your top priority. It does help that since Freeze got to level 3, it is doing a very, very large chunk of damage, even though it's not hitting an elemental weakness. Getting that 150% spell power bonus is very nice. So now, because we're now up to 4 seeds, we get a big whopping 16 damage bonus on all of our high rolls. And not yet, but probably about the next 20 minutes or so, this is going to be our only source of damage. We're going to be doing a slight sequence break. And the Mana Seed damage is the only reason it's it's the only reason it is possible. So because we've got the Fire Seed, there's no more enemies that spawn on this area. I probably... Alright, so we're about halfway there on the axe. Yo, Jensik, thank you for the 300 biddies to the channel, sir. So here we have a large amount of money, so we're going to be buying quite a few Fairy Walnuts and Cups of Wishes. So even though we do have 1,700 left in the bank, we do need a good chunk to make sure we get the weapon upgrade that we need after the next dungeon. So we're opening up the area to the Empire. The Empires are the one that are trying to resurrect the Mana Fortress for power. And this is kind of like where a lot of similarities... I see a lot of similarities for FF6. You have the Empire trying to prove goodwill with a banquet, and they end up betraying you. Randy and Prim look a lot like Chrono and Marl from Chrono Trigger. Popoi is just off in his own little world, but he's happy, so we're not going to say anything. So Mara is a Resistance member that got the code for the sewers. So it's always 634, which is nice. There is a funny glitch in any percent, where if you go behind the trees, that guy will just teleport you up to the sewers quite fast. It saves like 4 seconds. Unfortunately, it got patched out in this version. So the code's 634. And now we get to go through the sewers. If Prim or Popoi, the girl or sprite, end up getting the Snowman effect, I wouldn't be angry. Snowman effect basically turns off that character's AI, which also means they can't take any damage. So you can pretty much run through here without having to worry about healing or anyone dying. Funny thing to note in this NES version, if Randy is a snowman coming into this room, the game actually soft locks. Because the game can't flag Randy's AI to start a conversation because of the snowman effect. So here, if Randy's a snowman, you just see him as normal, and if he's dead, he just has a grayscale to him. So the characters are still included in the cutscenes, they're just lacking color. So here we meet up with Pamela or Fiona, depending on what name you like. So Fiona smacked Prim back when we met in Podos, so Prim hits her with a sword, and then she regrets it for payback. Fiona and Dialog are just two characters that just really seem thrown into this world without really much thought to it, or really any thought at all. Just because a large chunk of their backstory is missing. So this area, it's not uncommon to lose a pretty big chunk of time. There's these imps in the purple form like to cast Flame Bouquet. And once again, if we die with Flame Bouquet, if the boy or the girl die, we have to reset. Because losing 25% of your attack stat is huge when it comes in terms of damage. So we are going to be taking a detour. To open up a switch to get a couple of sword orbs. Just felt like putting them on Darkness to look beautiful and wonderful. So technically we are 2 sword orbs behind. After you defeated Wallface, you were supposed to go to Pandora Castle to get a sword orb and a spear orb, but since we skipped that, this is the game's way of catching you up. So if you missed any orbs going into a certain area, the chest will just keep respawning until you're at the appropriate amount. So there we got 2 sword orbs, which will put us at where basically the game expected us to be at this point. Oh, please don't kill my Popoi. You's a good boy. So Wallface isn't nearly as interesting. We're just going to spam spells on him. And then whenever the middle eye opens, we're going to be doing a little bit of physical damage. There we go. So that was Doom's Wall. Like I said, you just really can't compete with the spell power of freeze, especially once you start leveling up. It would try to kill us. I seen the way it was looking at us. I didn't trust it for a second. We get the gang back together. Bad. The only randomness in this fight is if the vampire stays in the air or goes on the floor. If he comes down, and we can hit him with a couple of physicals in the meantime. It's just a bunch of extra damage. It doesn't speed it up by really anything, but... And this is where we'll usually get Undine to level 4. This is where Undine's going to stay for quite a long time. So you can see the big damage difference. 118 to 236, 230. The 236 with the low roll is probably hitting for about 180 normally. And this is where it devolves down to the usual secret of mana everyone's known and loved from childhood. Just spam magic until the enemy ceases to exist. So because we're going to check the boy's axe level again. It's probably still too low. I would really like to get him off the axe somewhere around this point in the run normally. 54. Yeah, he's still really low. So here we're going to, since we've solved the issues in the Northtown ruins, we're going to go talk to the returners, and they're like, hey, we've been invited to the Empire for some food. We're going to go check it out. You should come with us. We're like, we got this, but our friend's in town, we have to go visit them. So Watts, it just invades anyone's home he wants, or any open shop, and he just kind of squats in it. He's like, you have a very nice fire. I want to stay here. And everyone in the town's like, sure, strange person, no problem. So this weapon upgrade doesn't really help out the next two fights coming up. It does help out the other fights after that. If you get the Orichalcum Blade, you get the damage bonus for Metal Mantis. If you get the Mass Immune, you get the damage bonus for Mech Rider 2. The damage bonus for Mech Rider 2 is infinitely more valuable, but if you only have enough money for the Orichalcum Blade, it's not the end of the world. The fight just takes a little bit longer. Maybe he's a Yakuza. So we end up getting kidnapped, and the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna bother the jailers. And he's like, oh, you want out, eh? Go fight this giant ant we've equipped with armor. We'll see how bad you want freedom. Goodbye, Metal Mantis. Mech Rider coming up is the only, or one of the very, very few bosses that got a stat change. For some reason, they gave him a ridiculous amount of magic defense. So even though Freeze is doing 200 damage to a lot of these guys, it'll only be dealing 1 or 2 damage to Mech Rider. So we'll be seeing a return of slowdown from Gnome. The only reason we use slowdown is it only costs 1 magic point. Grabbing this for just a little bit of extra money. So even though like we're not looking for spells to do damage, I guess I'll be nice. You don't have to let them out. You can let them just sit in the jail cell for the rest of the game. Once again, just because he likes to move around in his motorcycle, speed down will just kind of help keep him in place for a little bit. I should have attacked you. So you can thankfully still hit the switch without going all the way around through the puzzle. This is a bad start. Oh, this is a very bad start. There we go. Alright, we made it. That could have gone a lot worse. Some fights, you can just keep them stun locked in that one area. Some fights, it's not uncommon to go through 5 or 6 cups of wishes. That was still a pretty tame fight for what could happen. So now we get our best mode of transportation. Flamey. So you don't actually have to drop off the King of Matango. So he's gonna join us for the rest of the adventure. And this is kind of like, this always felt out of place to me for a fetch quest. So the only thing we have to do is we have to run all the way around this area to talk to an old man on top of the mountain, or on top of the wall. He's like, hey, there's someone from Southtown that had a key for something. You should go talk to him. It's kind of like, all right, I guess. So we have to make this whole trek just to talk to Baba Ganoush. And now we have to do one of the hardest things in the run. Try to find Southtown. All right, we went to the cannon travel. We overshot, but we still made it. So we're not really supposed to be doing Gold Tower quite yet. And our damage is going to definitely be reflecting it. I think we're supposed to do Dark Palace first, go get Shade, and then come here. And just having that little bit of extra level really helps out, but we really want access to Luna. We really want that moon energy, and we really want Lunar Boost. Southtown is east. It's very, very weird when you look at on the map. It makes the sense, but in the game, it doesn't make any sense. So these two fights coming up, Blue Spiky and Gorgon Bull. If they go fine, they're probably like a minute a piece. If they go bad, they're probably about 2 to 3 minutes. So we will actually be using Acid Storm. Acid Storm gives us a 10 damage increase to our physicals. So a lot of the randomness in this fight comes from, will Sprite's spells be doing 1 damage or will they be doing 60 damage? And that's the big randomness in this fight. Because if we end up getting a low roll, because our spell power is so low, it will only end up doing 1 damage. So here I'm going to be casting Flame Bouquet with the girl to keep up the magical stun lock for Spiky Tiger, just to stop him from getting off the ground. Even though Freeze is at level 4, it's still not at that point where we can just permanently stun lock with 1 spell. I can let her die to that. Alright, so Blue Tiger is the only boss that does this fake death animation. So he has something along the lines of like 2200 attack, or 2200 hit points. So we're just very slowly like chipping it away, whether spells do either 1 damage or they do 60. There we go. So the boy Dyne isn't the biggest of deals. Just due to EXP normalization, it'll level out eventually. Even if he is a level or 2 behind at the end game, levels don't give you a bunch of stats to begin with. So if anything, you're down probably 2 or 3 attack. That was a very, very rocky fight, but we got through it. If anything, the boy missed out on a little bit of weapon experience. So much like the sword orbs from the Northtown ruins, we've missed 3 axe orbs up to this point. Well, technically 2, because this chest has 1 anyways. So we're now all caught up on axe orbs. Gorgon Bull is a very, very interesting boss, actually. So if you don't move, you won't take damage, which is the biggest trap for a lot of casual players, because your first instinct when someone comes running towards you is to get out of the way. But if you just stand there, you don't take any damage. Once again, just using Acid Rain to give us a little extra physical damage. And then much like Spiky Tiger, just casting spells to try to keep them stun locked as much as we can. These guys have a lot of like very, very heavy hitting attacks. So these two fights greatly depend on your crit luck and your spell damage luck. So what I'm looking for is right when Undine disappears to cast Fire Bouquet with the girl. Because if I do it too early, the magic stun lock won't happen. So we can see here we're getting pretty unlucky with the spell rolls. A lot of them have ended up being hit for 1. And unfortunately, we're not even getting magic experience for this. Because we're already capped out on levels. Oh, nice. But the time you do lose fighting these guys early does pay off in scores for the rest of the game. So we get 5 seeds, which means our damage increase goes from 16 to 25. We also get Lumina, sorry. Lumina will be used quite a bit. Lucid Barrier is a very, very useful skill, or a useful spell. It basically grants you a hit point, or a barrier that has as much hit points as you do. So a lot of speedruns, it means we can take a hit without needing to revive. And especially when we're going to be running around with with the Moon Energy buff. The Moon Energy, your crits disappear when you die. So by casting Lucid Barrier, it's just a good way to make sure you go into a boss fight with a boatload of crits. Which is going to be the theme coming up very quickly. So the good thing is we get 2 mana sword orb, or we get 2 mana orbs, or mana seeds very, very close to each other. So we went from 14 to 25 damage, now up to 36. Unfortunately, if you do end up sequence breaking and trying to come here early, Charon's just not flagged to show up, so the boat's empty. It would be nice to have the Lunar Boost for the 25% attack up and free crits for the fight, but sadly the game was a little too smart for that. Actually. Alright, I made a mistake. Really hoping the girl doesn't get mana absorbed. Because I don't have any fairy walnuts. This dungeon's annoying just because if Prim ends up getting zapped of her magic, you have to throw a fairy walnut. And because those fights went pretty bad, I don't have any extras. So I hope you're all ready for Moon Energy sound effects, because you're going to be hearing it a lot in the next about half hour, 40 minutes. It's pretty much going to be the only thing you end up hearing. So if we end up getting MP zapped on the way out, it's not a big deal. It will save me a bunch of magic though, which is nice. So, Moon Energy gives us 1 free crit at level 0, and for every level it's increased, it gives us 1 more free crit. And we can crit at 0% stamina, unlike the SNES version. So our main priority is to upgrade it as much as possible. Occasionally cure water iframe. Alright. Tasnica, there we go. So if your weapons are sheathed, you gain half the amount of magic experience, rounded down. So for level 0 to get to level 1, each spell cast gives you Dyne experience. If we were to cast it in town, it would only give us 4. And I have just enough to use Lunar Boost twice before I have to use a Fairy Walnut. I thought I casted 3 magic there for a second. I was just going to double check before I misspoke. So, Poe having 0 magic doesn't really matter. Thankfully, this ninja coming up is just an ordinary bad guy. So the main quest line in this area is you're supposed to go up to the top of the lofty mountains. Jock will give you a quest. You go finish the quest, you go talk to Jock, and then he'll send you on another quest. And you repeat this over and over and over again to his satisfaction. But since we know where to go, we can save going up and down the mountain 5 or 6 times. It's all about finding courage. So we got a sword orb, then we have to talk to Gemma. If we skip talking to Gemma, the Jock's not flagged to talk to us at the top of the lofty mountains. So sadly, we can't call for flaming in any of these areas except this main area here. For some reason, this small little corridor is okay. So because I suck at numbers, I'm gonna go upgrade the weapons first. Once again, Watts has made himself home in someone else's house. Actually, what is the axe sitting at? 75. I'll swap it for the next area. So here's, in a PB attempt, this would be like the second to last shop. So you want to buy as many fairy walnuts as you can. Paying 300 for a cup of wish isn't bad, but paying 1,000 GP for a fairy walnut is quite pricey. So I'm gonna reload this because that was a very... wait, never mind. Dang it. Yeah, I'm gonna reload this. That was not a good setup. There we go. Oops. Alright, now don't die. Alright, so Lunar Boost grants a 25% attack upgrade. Since it's a timed buff, dying while the buff is active removes the duration flag but doesn't remove the buff flag. So much like with the speed up, now we have a permanent 25% upgrade, or a permanent 25% attack upgrade buff as well. That's a reset. So that dying from the flame bouquet would just basically negate the lunar boost glitch. It's one of the big pain in the asses for this area. Anytime you get those purple imps, it's a big gamble whether or not you're gonna either save a bunch of time or lose a bunch of time from reloads. So I'm just gonna have Prim alternate between casting Moon Energy on herself and then Popoi. Just try to maximize the amount of casts I get in, because I do want it leveled up quite a bit to get more free crits out of the spell. If I get Popoi a free level up, that would be nice. So Prim will be eating up our fairy walnuts quite a bit. Nice. So level 1 now means I get 2 crits per cast. Alright, looks like I'm not getting a level on Popoi. So going from doing 30 damage of physical to 200 is a very big damage increase. And this is where a lot of the battles now will end up being quite a bit faster. So like we're doing 97 normal. And then we do 552 with 2 crits. Crits don't do as much damage as magic, but you can do physicals faster because you don't need a fancy like spell casting animation. Spamming attack spells is a viable tactic. We still cast spells to put the enemy in a magical stun lock, so they can't get their actions off if it's timed correctly. The big issue is this game does have a sprite limitation. So if Moon Energy and Freeze happen around the same time, Moon Energy will actually push back Freeze from being casted, which will knock the enemy out of a magic stun lock. So instead of magic being our big source of damage, physical is now our big source of damage with crits, and magic is used just to stun lock the enemy. Like there'll be some enemies like Red Dragon, for instance, that like a freeze will do 500-600 damage, which is going to be infinitely more than an attack. But for 2 magic, you're definitely getting a lot more damage out of that than you are a freeze. So now Luna's at level 2, which means we get 3 free crits per cast. I'm hoping this will be the last shop of the run, but the run will decide that. Just save in case something bad happens. So we bought the Ivy Armlet. The Ivy Armlet prevents the sleep status that you get from Sleep Flower. The enemies in the next dungeon coming up like to spam it, so it's just a good way to keep Randy awake so we can keep progressing. It's kind of the same thing in this version as well. So here the main thing is face your fears. So at the end of this, we fight 3 shadows of ourselves. There's 2 ways to go about the fight. One way is to just, if you die, that the corresponding shadow will also disappear. So if you just kill 2 people, revive 1, kill off the 3rd person, the trial's over. The issue with that is if all 3 people die, you have to run through this all over again. So it's a little bit slower, but it is safer just to go out and kill them, especially since we do have a large chunk of damage at our disposal. These are day 1 exclusive costumes. I put them on for shits and giggles. I think they look cute. So as you can see, starting with the sprite dead, instantly removed the sprite's shadow. Pre-ordered or buy the game when it first got released. Is Sprite Shadow 1 hard? No. He has 800 hit points. They have basically max stats. So the boy has 999 hit points. The girl and the Sprite one has 800. Thankfully, they'll only use physical spells. So Sprite has the boomerang, the girl has the fists, and the guy has the sword. So it's not hard, it's just another enemy to barrel through with hit points. So here we're getting into the Mana Palace, and we first have to fight a watermelon. So, and that's how the vast majority of the bosses will be looking from now on. The ability just to constantly pump out 1,000, 1,200, 2,000 damage in 7 or 8 attacks is quite a bit faster than what we can ever do with speeds of magic. So basically the whole plan is to go into every battle with Randy and Prim fully stocked with crits. If you're 1 or 2 short at higher levels, it doesn't matter, but since we don't have a lot at the excess, we still want as many as possible. So here we get the Dryad element. Dryad's the only element that has 2 spells. Mana Sword is locked by Thanatos, one of the main baddies in the game. So Mana Sword is the only spell you get to use for the very final boss, and that's it. Yeah, in the SNES, I think it was Boy, Girl, and Sprite. But now it's Randy, Prim, and Popoi. I'm not going to restore the Sprite's magic yet. Because there are a couple more of these Marmalade enemies coming up. So we're just gonna run through the dungeon. We have to hit a couple of switches to progress. We'll give Sprite this. Give me some crits, and we're instantly thrown into a boss battle. Prim ran out of magic there, but so like I said, with Lunar Boost, speed up, and just a vast amount of crits, none of the bosses really last long. The next boss coming up is especially a joke. For some reason, he has the lowest hit points, like by far out of anyone in this area. So the Emperor used to have 4 henchmen. He's now down to 1 henchwoman. That we'll be taking care of very, very shortly. Casting this Lucid Barrier saves 2 cups of wishes. So you heard that ting? That means Sprite just lost his Lucid Barrier. So the Lucid Barrier took the terms of damage instead of him. Keeping the 2 characters and also in a magic casting state also helps reduce the damage they take. Now, for a large part of it, they will be immune to damage. You'll see this a lot in the Pure Lands. I'll just start queuing up spells with everyone to keep them safe while going through the area. Bye, Sprite. Oh, hey, I didn't know the Sprite the Sprite died and he's confused. So this area, I can't keep. All right, so this kind of what happens. The switch doesn't use stamina. So if an enemy is stopping the Sprite from doing an action, he'll just repeatedly attack over and over again, which can lead to some funny business, but you can't do anything until the enemy's dead. God, now I'm stuck in a loop. Alright, so now that we're finally past that. So I would really like... I didn't get the cast off, which isn't the worst thing. We can all be Moogles. There we go. Moogles. This Lucid Barrier is just to keep the crits functional on these people while they stay alive. It's the only two options. So here we meet up with Team Rocket again. Thankfully, Kettlekin only has about 1,200 hit points. A lot of these bosses have anywhere between 25 to 3,000. So he goes down to 6 crits pretty easy. So now we get into the puzzle part of this area, in a sense. Oh, I guess coming up in a little bit. It's not Team Rocket without Meowth. I don't know how we can add that in half-ass. Talking cat is key. So here we have to go to 8 different rooms. Each one of them has an orb that we need to use a certain element on to break, much like going into Matango. You can usually tell which one to use by the color of the room. We're looking to be about 35 minutes at the moment, without any huge time losses. This is one of my runs that actually has a proper estimate. So it's faster to escape and go back to the beginning than it is to just run through everything again, because we need to go up the stairs. Once again, Lucid Barrier is just to protect us from physicals. Because Sprite, Popoi needs to be alive to do he doesn't need to be alive to do these tosses, but it's definitely faster than trying to revive him. No worries, Frosty. So with these doorways, you want to at least hit these swords. If these swords end up hitting you, they can actually push you through the transition again. So you end up having to go through it again once more. You can try to kill these swords. Sometimes you can't kill them before the spell animation goes off, which makes it a little bit wonky at times, but it's still nothing. The extra experience is nice for a little bit of extra safety. So we want Prim to have full magic. This is her room for Lucid Barrier. Lucid Barrier costs an ungodly amount of magic for very little damage. I don't know, it's nice that Prim has some offensive spells, but all of her offensive spells just aren't good in terms of damage, damage versus magic. So we're almost at the end. We got one more orb to trip. Nice little censorship. Those wolves were in this nest were called hellhounds. And due to censorship, they got changed to heckhounds. Buffy the vampire in Mana Fortress also got changed to Vampire King. Due to also copyright. So the boy will just stay there on fire. He'll be fine. I have the utmost faith in him that he won't completely burn to the ground, but just enough to make my life horrible. Heckin' hounds. They're just less vulgar about it. So this is the last orb we need to trigger. So I believe we still have Lucid Barrier, which is very nice for this point. So this is another pretty weak boss. Snappy the Dragon doesn't have very much hit points either. And we can just trap him in the corner. So we still have Lucid Barrier. If I can keep it through Hexus, we're looking really good. It just saves a spell cast going into Mech 3. So there we just seen what I was talking about with Moon Energy pushing back Freeze. There was that long delay before nothing happened. Hexus is like one of the more interesting bosses when you fight her casually. She's got 4 different phases. Each phase uses a different kind of magic. But once again, like crits and just a magic stun lock just do so much damage. So Mech 3 is a zombie. They tried to revive him and it didn't work out too well. So a mech you want to unload after when a spell is going off. Because every time you hit him, he likes to zoom around. Spells. Alright, so this fight just got a little more difficult. Still not a horrible fight. Randy doesn't have crits for Pure Lands, which still isn't the biggest of concerns at the moment. If I'm very conservative with my spells, I can skip the last shop. So now we have to go to the Pure Lands to depower the Mana Fortress, because we can't actually access it yet. There we go. So here you're just going to see a lot of magical casts for safety. A lot of these enemies are just going to one-shot us. Like that. There's also a very specific setup I want to do. Alright, I think I might have lost it, but let's see what happens. By putting Popoi out front, he's the target of the spells, which allows us to just freely wail on the Dragon Worm. Get back here. There we go. I was a little late on Prim's cast. Alright, not the best of starts. So everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Randy died when I wanted him to live. Thankfully, these bosses don't live for too long. Popoi getting that attack off really kind of put a wrench into things. Yeah, the drop rate here for the rare drops is abysmal. I think you're sitting at like a 0.56 to 0.62% of a chance for like the rare items to drop. And you need so many of them if you like want to be the completionist. Even if you want to get all the weapon orbs, you're looking at about a half a percent drop rate for everything. Can you please stop murdering everyone? So that's how the bosses are supposed to look. Come on, X button, work. So I'm just switching to Prim while the spell animation is going off to unload a couple of her crits. She doesn't do close to what Randy does, but it still ends up being a good about 500-600 damage she does in the 4 or 5 crits she gets. And it kind of, like, it's nice for the speedrun that we have such a good way of dealing damage, but it does kind of suck in a sense where it's, to me it feels like the run, oh thanks, where the run kind of goes downhill after you get Luna. Grim, stop dying on me, girl. So for, Thunder Gigas has the highest amount of hit points out of any boss in this area. I think it's 4,400 he has. But he still goes down in just a couple of Luna casts. So there's one more boss and we're done with the Pure Lands, and then we're off to the Mana Fortress. We've probably got about 20 minutes left in the run. The Mana Fortress goes by pretty quickly if everything goes okay. Let me check my items. 4. Alright, yeah, we're gonna need to do the shop for safety. Doing the Mana Fortress with 4, if I remember to get the Bum Rush. Can't forget that. We would be so screwed without the Bum Rush. That was a less than stellar Pure Lands, but I'll take it. So here, Thanatos has one option to get rid of everyone. And he wastes his one shot on destroying a tree, where he could just destroy the heroes and then go after the tree. Huge oversight. Don't do this if you're plotting an evil plan. Prepare to panic if your Mana Fortress split is gold. So here we learn Randy's mom became one with the mana tree. So his mom's a tree and his dad's a knight. I don't know the logistics on how that works, but we'll go with it. So we get to the mana tree. We think we're okay. We're gonna have a good, happy family reunion. Thanatos uses his one shot and blows the tree up. It equates to a Moogle. So now we have all full 8 powers of the Mana Sword. Improve sightlessness, value property increases. If you want to live in a volcano. So I want to find... Where is desert? There is desert. So I'm just gonna stock up on Cups of Wishes. I might as well stock up on everything since I'm here. I still refuse to give my people armor, even though we have 200,000 GP. I refuse to give them anything other than the pajamas they started with. Chocolate. I thought that was going to be a party wipe. Apparently not. Good start of the Mana Palace. Already burned 4 cups of wishes. So a lot of the enemies here are quite deadly. Like I took 250 damage from a single attack. That's really not going to change. It's just they're going to keep taking more and more of the hit point bar away from me. I want Randy with crits. Because Prim can stock herself up here. I should say Popoi. Yeah. Nice. Not so nice. So if he can come back down, this fight ends very quickly. If he decides to stay in the air, this fight just goes on for a little bit longer. Like doing 208 per spell cast is quite a bit different than doing a bunch with physicals, as the rest of the game has already shown. So even though the game capped out at 982 damage, it was registering every hit we did separately. So the game's maximum display value is 999, but you can still do 3,000–4,000 damage before the game. Not even really before the game. The game just keeps track of all damage. So at one point after the Dread Slime fight coming up, we will be leveling up Dryad to level 1. This is just to increase the Mana Sword duration. Even on a low roll, it doesn't last very long, but for the mana beast, we want to at least have a shot at the extended duration. Ah, Popoi, stop dying on me. Grim, stop dying on me. So these next couple of enemies just have a boatload of defense. So by casting Acid Storm, we're giving ourselves an extra about 40 damage per crit. And we can see like Freeze will either do 1 damage or 27. Even with the 64 damage we get from the Mana Sword, or all the 8 Mana Seeds, it's still not enough to really do anything meaningful on its own. for some reason, I still gain time on that split. I think the remake was a little too faithful. Like, they did lift a lot of the assets from Adventures of Mana, the PSP port of the Final Fantasy Adventures. Everyone, stop dying, please. Ah, shite. Alright, someone should be gaining a magic level soon. Alright, so everyone got to level 1. Which means I can ditch this. Oh, nice. Prem didn't even have wall active. So here we have the final showdown with Thanatos. Thanatos has the second highest hit points in the game at 6,660. He's also got one of the best boss tracks in the game. So this is where Dyluck ends up sacrificing himself so you can actually get rid of Thanatos. Thanatos is an immortal Lich King or a Necromancer that just kept sucking the life out of people to live longer. So we cast Acid Storm once again just to eke out a little bit of extra damage. Oh, nice. Alright, now that's all we got left is the Mana Beast. Now we can either get the quick kill or the slow kill. So, we released Thanatos' spell over Dryad. It looks like Flammy. The good thing is the costumes persist through the cutscenes, which just makes them even more ridiculous. So Popoi, I think, is probably animated the best out of the three. His emotions during a lot of the cutscenes are really, really good. He's kind of like the comic relief for a large chunk of it. These Moogles mechanically advantageous? No, they're just really cute, Doctor. It makes me feel better about myself. So we're actually going to trigger the mana sword cutscene now. The cutscene eats into the duration of the sword. So we're going to see it anyways, but doing it now just gives us that little bit of extra. It gives us a good 8 or 9 seconds of extra duration. And this is where the partial weapon experience comes into play. So about it, I'll be doing probably about 700 to 800 damage to the mana beast with a crit. So since he's a cycle-based boss, we're just going to be basically sitting around. We're going to be casting spells at very specific points, like Lucid Barrier, to protect us from these attacks. And then we're going to get him way off in the side zone with a very, very early, very early acid rain to reduce his hit defense. He has 450 defense, so this gives us an extra 90 damage. And then using Gem Missile just because it's a very, very long animation. Alright. Didn't quite get the quick kill. So he has a undispellable wall. So I'm going to try to get the mana sword back up. Alright, that didn't work out too well either. Alright, round 2. Give Popoe some magic. We're probably gonna need to give Prim a spell, a walnut too. And oh, I should have said time's coming up. Time. Of course we get the music glitch. It's okay, I prepared for this. Oh no, we didn't so far. Not the cleanest of runs, but still held it together pretty good. Pure Lands and Mana Fortress were very big buttheads. Sing the credits for us. There are no songs. Well, like, I never want to mislead anyone on a game. I know there's like a couple of people in my chat specifically that would never have played the game but played it since I started de-rusting for the marathon. And like, they're still asking a good chunk for the game. I think they're still asking like 40 Canadian. I don't know what that equates to the rest of the world because our rupees suck. But like, it's definitely worth a playthrough, but don't set your expectations too high. It is a really fun playthrough. It allowed me to play my favorite game for the first time again. Which is something I really liked. The game was very buggy when it first came out. Square did do, yeah, you missed time selling this. That was my fault. I didn't say anything. But it's definitely worth a playthrough, like when the price drops. And the mana collection also exists.